Good evening. Activists opposed to the redevelopment of the North-East New Territory say more than 10 of them have been charged in connection with an unruly protest outside Lechco in June. They accused the government of using what they called scare tactics ahead of a series of civil disobedience campaigns. Emily Siu reports.
We do not fear political persecution, chanted activists on arrival at Central Police Station this afternoon. They marched there after learning that some of them had been charged with various offences in connection with a rowdy protest outside Lechco earlier this year. The charges include illegal assembly, obstructing Lechco officers from carrying out their duties, and forcibly entering the complex. These stem from the storming of Lechco in June by hundreds of people opposed to plans to build two new towns in Kutong North and Fanling North in the new territories. Many used metal rods and bamboo sticks in a bid to pry open heavily guarded doors. And during the unrest, the outer walls of the building were damaged. Police officers used pepper spray in a bid to break up the protest, the most violent in Hong Kong in recent years. The convener of Voice for Land Justice, one of the groups behind the demonstration, described the arrests as political persecution and white terror, a term often used to allege political suppression.
As we all know that there is a student strike and the Occupy Central is coming soon. So if the police and government choose this critical moment to arrest and charge us, this is a very, we know that they have a mission behind their mind.
Ho said 23 protesters who took part in the rally outside Lechco received calls from the police over the past 2 days to help in their investigation, and some of them, including one aged 15, have been charged. They will appear at Eastern Magistracy next Thursday.
The transport chief has defended the decision not to build a coastal railway line between Chun Wan and Tuen Mun, saying it's not worth the money. Anthony Leung also denied railway planning was politically motivated. Winner Wong reports.
Transport Minister Anthony Leung has been doing a lot of explaining after the government unveiled plans to build 7 new railway lines or extensions. The projects costing $110 billion would be constructed between 2018 and 2026. Some say the government is overstretching itself at a time when the MTRC is facing delays in its 5 current projects. Others are asking why some areas are not being served. On a radio show this morning, Leung said he understood the disappointment of New Territories residents after the government decided to scrap a plan for a coastal line between Chun Wan and Tuen Mun. He said the project won't be cost-effective because the population in those 2 districts is projected to rise by about 10% by 2021 and then stop growing. Leung said networks need to complement Hong Kong's development over the next 2 decades.
First, of course, we need to respond to increasing traffic demands in various areas. Secondly, we would like to facilitate some major development, particularly housing development and industrial or commercial development. And thirdly, we would like to enhance the convenience of traveling on the railway network.
Leung hopes to build a more intricate web of railways, so if anything happens in one part, commuters can fall back on alternative routes. He also insisted that the decision to build an East Kowloon line was not to favor certain political groups, but because the district will see many new developments in the future. But critics allege that the DAB has been pushing for the project, which will connect Diamond Hill Station on the Kwun Tong line and Po Lam Station on the Cheung Kwan O line. Winner Wong, ATV News.
Political experts say Hong Kong's first chief executive, Tung Chee-hwa, is adopting a more high-profile role to try and heal the rift in society triggered by China's restrictive framework for political reform. Tung has proposed setting up a think tank, an idea endorsed by his former finance chief, Anthony Leung. Emily Siu reports.
Former Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa set the rumor mill spinning after unveiling his plan to set up a think tank to promote the long-term development of Hong Kong. The proposal by the city's first post-handover leader has been endorsed by many, including Anthony Leung, who served as Tung's finance minister.
I would support him and anybody that would contribute to the stability and prosperity of Hong Kong.
Leung added that he wouldn't hesitate if Tung invites him to join the think tank. Tung is a veteran leader as well as my elder. How can I say no to him, said Leung. But the former finance czar reiterated that he has no plans to run for chief executive in 2017. Leung was tight-lipped about political affairs since resigning because of health problems in 2005. But he returned to the spotlight earlier this month to endorse Beijing's ultra-conservative framework on constitutional reform. The National People's Congress Standing Committee decided that there will be a maximum of 3 candidates for chief executive, and they must be patriots who secure majority support in the 1,200-strong nominating committee. All opposition lawmakers have vowed to veto the government's reform package set up under such conditions which virtually rule out pan-democratic candidates. Chinese university political scientist Ivan Choi believes Tong's recent high-profile remarks are driven by the city's current situation and division in society.
He wants to play a more and more prominent role in Hong Kong politics and try to change his low profile in the past 10 years. That is the only one thing that we can make sure at this moment.
Choi refused to speculate whether Beijing instructed Tong, a vice chairman of China's top political advisory body, to set up the think tank. But Choi said the members could be made up of powerful figures to help bolster Beijing's position in discussions on political reform.
The Council on Smoking and Health is again pushing for higher tobacco tax to force smokers to quit. But one health expert says that instead, smokers should be offered cash to encourage them to stop. Winner Wong reports.
A public health expert has come up with a novel recommendation: pay smokers to stub out the habit. During a radio show this morning, public health expert Lam Tai-hing of Hong Kong University argued that monetary incentives can spur many to give up the habit. He suggested that smokers who quit for 1 month should get $1,000, rising to $2,000 for 3 months, and $10,000 if a person can stay away from cigarettes for an entire year. People who reach the 1-year mark rarely ever relapse, Lam said. He said family members should be rewarded too if they help smokers give up. Lam suggested that a woman be given $5,000 if she helps her husband to stop smoking for 12 months. That way the family will be $15,000 richer at the end of 1 year. Skeptics argued that the system can be abused. But Lam said cheats can easily be found out by blood, hair, or nail tests. Participants could also sign a pledge not to take a puff now and then. But on the same radio show, an anti-smoking group continued to push for the traditional approach, higher tobacco tax. The chairwoman of the Council on Smoking and Health, Lisa Lau, justified her group's recent suggestion that the tax should surge by 57%. If cigarettes become expensive, smokers will think twice, she said. Lau says there had been no tobacco tax increase for 8 years in a row until 2007, and in the past 3 years, the increase totaled only 25%. As a result, smokers still find cigarettes affordable, said the head of the anti-smoking group. If the tax jumps by 57%, a packet of cigarettes would cost around $77, compared with $55 now. Winner Wong, ATV News.
Shares in Chinese e-commerce titan Alibaba Group Holding surged by 38% on their first day of trading in New York. With banks expected to buy additional shares, Alibaba's initial public offering is on course to be the world's biggest. Joyce Wu reports.
It was an auspicious U.S. debut for shares of the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba Group Holding. Scores of people, including Chinese tourists, gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange before the start of trading yesterday. CEO and founder Jack Ma was present to witness the historic moment that would make the former English language teacher the richest person in China. 8 Alibaba customers rang the opening bell, triggering a rush of more than 100 million shares traded in the first few minutes. Alibaba priced shares for its initial public offering at $68 each, but they surged to $92.70 at the start of the trade. The stock reached a day high of $99.70 before closing at $93.89, up 38% from its offer price. Alibaba is now worth $231 billion, exceeding the combined market capitalization of Amazon and eBay, the 2 leading U.S. e-commerce companies. The mainland firm raised nearly $22 billion from its IPO. But if, as expected, underwriters exercise their option for an additional 48 million shares, the IPO could bring in $25 billion, making it the largest in history. Analysts say the e-commerce giant still has room to grow.
A lot of people in China have mobile devices, but high-speed mobile devices are just really coming into that market, which means that more time will be spent online, more things will be done mobilely.
Alibaba, which started in 1999, now accounts for about 80% of online sales in China, and its New York debut took Ma's personal fortune to more than $25 billion.
Overseas, the leader of the Scottish National Party that led the failed bid to leave the United Kingdom has announced his resignation. Alex Salmond also accused the British government of already failing to deliver its promise of new powers to Scotland for staying in the Union. Ben O'Rourke reports.
Scottish nationalists and unionists took their battle from the ballot box to the streets of Glasgow after Thursday's referendum result showed most people want to stay in the United Kingdom. Police on horses tried to separate the two groups after a large crowd of unionists gathered in St George's Square and began goading independence supporters. Following the defeat, the leader of the independence movement, Scottish National Party head Alex Salmond, announced his resignation. In a parting shot, he accused British Prime Minister David Cameron of already going back on his word regarding new powers promised to Scotland in return for rejecting independence.
I spoke to the Prime Minister today, and although he reiterated his intention to proceed as he has now outlined, he would not commit to a second reading vote by the 27th of March on a new Scotland bill. The Prime Minister says such a vote would be meaningless. I suspect he can't guarantee the support of his party. And as we've already seen in the last hour, the common front between Labour and Tory and Labour, is starting to break.
Salmond insisted the fight for independence will continue. There were mixed reactions to his resignation.
As somebody who supported Yes, I think he's been brilliant, and I can see why he might want to go, but I think he's been really inspiring.
I know a lot of people that voted Yes that weren't very keen on the guy in the first place, but the vote wasn't for him.
Pro-independence groups now fear London will go through with policy changes that will seriously affect their quality of life, from housing to healthcare and civil liberties. Meanwhile, even though the Scots voted no, pro-independence movements worldwide will be spurred on.
You have to see the very act of holding the referendum as the earthquake that will have aftershocks in different parts of Europe, and quite frankly, as far afield as Taiwan and other areas that, for some who seek self-determination. It's a rejection of globalization in some ways, and big supranational structures, whether those are large multinational corporations or large superstructures, in some way like the European Union.
The ripple effect is already being felt in Spain, where Catalonia's parliament has defied Madrid and decided to hold a vote on independence, and in Pakistan, where Kashmiris are demanding India deliver its promise to allow a similar vote in the disputed Himalayan region. The Scottish vote was also closely watched in Northern Ireland, where politicians have warned that Scottish nationalists pose a greater threat to the UK than the IRA, and that the entire union is hanging by a thread. As with Scotland, Northern Ireland will also experience some form of political shake-up when or if it is granted new powers promised by Cameron. Ben O'Rourke, ATV News.
Former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown told fellow Scots today that the British government needs to stick by its promise to give them extra powers.
But I am absolutely sure that unconditionally, the timetable and the powers that I set out 2 Mondays ago, where we talked about what would be devolved and the timetable for devolving, that will be delivered. And I want to give people in Scotland an assurance that when they were told 2 weeks ago that there would be delivery after decision day, that delivery has started and will continue, and people should be assured that it is being monitored, scrutinised, and the eyes of me, but the eyes of all of us, are upon it.
Brown was recruited by his successor David Cameron to try to convince Scots to reject independence, and the extra powers were promised during the final weeks of campaigning.
To a form of amity, that there will be an understanding that we have to cooperate.
In other world news, a JetBlue airliner has been forced to make an emergency landing in California because of an engine problem shortly after takeoff. But first, dozens of Turks seized by militants in Iraq have been released after 3 months in captivity.
49 Turks kidnapped by the militant group Islamic State in northern Iraq in June have returned home. The Turks, including diplomats, soldiers and children, were seized from their country's consulate general in the city of Mosul. The circumstances leading to their freedom are not clear, but officials said it was the result of a detailed and secret operation. Sources say a successful operation was conducted and no ransom was paid. All the former captives were said to be in good health. There was panic during a domestic flight in the US when smoke spread in the aircraft. Footage from a passenger showed people scrambling to put on oxygen masks before the JetBlue plane returned to Long Beach Airport in California and made an emergency landing. The plane, with 147 people on board, was on a flight to Austin in Texas when smoke billowed out of air vents following an engine failure.
We were up probably 10-15 minutes, and then the engine blew. Smoke started to come throughout the cockpit, through the plane, and it was chaos. So we landed.
No one was injured in the incident. A man who jumped over a security fence at the White House sparked an evacuation of one of the most highly protected buildings in the world. The breach prompted a rare evacuation of much of the compound. White House staff and journalists inside the West Wing were evacuated by Secret Service officers, some with their weapons drawn. The unidentified man reached the front door before police officers arrested him, just minutes after President Barack Obama had left for Camp David.
Sports news: an apology from the head of the NFL. Lewis Hamilton is fastest in Singapore and jail beckons for a fallen NBA former star. Rex Chapman, who once graced the court for the Phoenix Suns, is in hot water. The former NBA player has been arrested for allegedly shoplifting more than $14,000 worth of Apple products over several months in Arizona. Chapman